again and welcome to Phoenix Jazz with me, Stephanie Blythe, and my guest, Paul Wilkinson.
Great to be here, Stephanie. Great to be with you.
So you may remember Paul's been with me before. Paul's a professional pianist. He's a teacher. And today we're going to be looking at, listening to and talking about a recent release, which is 2 extended improvisations that came from a live performance locally in Brighouse at the Smiths Art Gallery. When was it?
When was it? I think October time, so not too long ago. So quite a quick release, really. Quite a quick turnaround to bring the CD and the MP3 downloads out.
Yeah, and it's an amazingly long track. The first track, it's called Hold Out Your Hand.
It's a long track, about 40 minutes. We can talk about it more once people have had a listen to it. But about 20 odd minutes in, there is a thing that keeps coming to me called Hold Out Your Hand. And maybe I can play that phrase. And that was a phrase that I explored for quite some time in that area. So when you're listening to it, try maybe listen out for that. And the words and the melodies kept singing, hold out your hand, and that kept coming to me.
Yeah, this is going a little bit deep actually, but do you have a view about whether music is closer to pure thought than words?
I think yes. I think that's a great phrase, and when this starts, I had no preconceptions about how I was going to start it. And I just sat down at the piano and I just had this idea of playing the A, which is kind of the 440 pitch, which is the note we use to tune everything to. And I thought, I wonder how long I can explore playing A. And when you listen to it, it is 3 to 4 minutes of A.
And then you go on to B.
And then I do go on to B flat at some point, and then the tune evolves. But I was kind of putting myself in a box and putting some limits on myself once I started it. I think that melody came, and then the words came, just sort of hold out your hand. And as I looked at the audience, they was so quiet. There was only one cough in the concert. Normally there's lots of coughs.
In.
Yeah. Oh, you know it. She knows when it was in, Stephanie, don't you? And so they were really listening, and I remember thinking, and I don't know, maybe that's what came was people are holding out their hand. I don't know, it sounds cheesy, but there was just that thing of they're really listening, you know. And one of the guys in the audience came up to me and said, the piano's not great, is it? And I said, no, it's not great. I said, but the room makes it sound great. And he said to me, I thought you were exploring the resonances of the room. And I said, yes, I was. And that's really interesting, actually, to have discussed that with him in the interval. It's worth saying that I only recorded it to document it for myself. When I tried the piano a few weeks before the concert, actually I'd played there a few weeks previously, and I think you were at the concert with the bass player Gary Jackson. And I remember thinking, actually, the piano's not as bad as I thought initially. It's not a great piano. I don't want to get geeky, but the regulation's a bit weird. It's very heavy and all that. But the room is so high ceilings, and the resonance seems to come through. So the piano sounds a lot nicer than it is. I think if it was in a tiny front room, it wouldn't sound so great. But I think that was the challenge, trying to make something come out of the piano sounding very average.
Well, I think that's probably a cue to listen to this first piece. Let's play it, shall we? So this is the first of the 2 improvisations, and it's called Hold Out Your Hand. So there we had the extended improvisation, Hold Out Your Hand. I was really intrigued, Paul, to think about how you achieved that. A lot of us would be fazed just by the idea of playing in front of people from music, let alone actually composing, which is what you were doing. Do you keep a sense of the whole thing somehow in your head as you're doing it?
Yes, I think I do. I mean, going back a tiny bit to what you just said, initially, this has been years since a boy of 13 or 14 doing this at home, and then even in my mid-20s, still thinking it was rubbish, you know, trying to achieve this thing. And my old professor of piano always says to me, I don't know why you bother, you're trying to do what is almost impossible.
Wow.
To make something up in the moment and keep it alive. But going on to the end of your question, yes, I'm trying to keep all the structures together and thinking about themes I played earlier, can I bring them back again? and will they reveal themselves in a different place? So yes, I am trying to think of all the structure as I go along.
That, in a sense, that's part of this craft you've learnt then over the years since you were 13, which must have been at least 10 years.
Yeah, well, thank you. That'll do.
Yeah, it's like you've created the space in your head to have the sense of the whole, like a little helicopter looking down.
Yeah, I think it's. I practice the method, but don't play the music, if you know what I mean. So the method is there now, so I don't need to practice it anymore. I don't practice for these solo concerts at all. But for this, I don't need to prepare it, apart from the 20 odd years of preparing I've done in the past, of practicing the intuitive process of trying to make something up on the spot. As you know, I write classical music. I hate the phrase, but music that would be classed as classical music, concert hall thing. And I suppose there I am dealing with the structure, but I have time to write that down. Whereas when I'm doing this solo concert, I don't have time. I am the composer, the performer, and the listener. And that phrase, you live and die by your sword, sometimes I make the wrong decision and that may take me somewhere else that becomes interesting. It really does depend.
As a professional musician, if somebody asked you to categorise this album, what genre it was, what would you say?
Pass.
Is that as far as I'm going to push you?
No, I think it's really interesting, and you know, I do have people that follow me music, and that's what you hope as a musician, that people come with you. And I know there's certain followers who don't warm to this music as much as they do of my swinging jazz music, and that's really interesting. And you do get followers who actually love both of them, but to categorise it, I think it's quite difficult. So I think that's your job and not mine.
Dear me. And sub-question to that, does the question annoy you?
You slightly, I suppose, yes. Hence I thought. So I thought I'd let you answer it instead. Just that.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to think of people who'd done something similar. So one thing I did was I looked on my, what do you call it, the thing you have in media player.
Oh yeah, your playlist and
I
things.
thought, what's the longest thing I've got here?
Go on then.
And the longest thing was Eric Dolphy.
Right.
Sax, flute and clarinet player. Sometimes characterised as free jazz or third stream. And he did something called The Prophet. It was a live concert.
Yeah. That's quite long, isn't it?
Yeah, that was 21 minutes and whatever.
Actually, you just mentioned something interesting there, because some people would say what I'm doing is free jazz. But free jazz is pretty much what we would call atonal, where it doesn't sound as though it's got a tonal centre. So I am playing free jazz, but in a tonal way, if you know what I mean. I am improvising. There is a sense of harmony and a sense of melody and flow, I think.
Yeah. And the next lengthy one I got was Keith Jarrett Trio, the Standards Trio with Gary Peacock and Jack DeJohnette. 19 minutes, the Out-of-Towners.
Oh, yes, the Out-of-Towners, yeah. I mean, Keith Jarrett is one of my favourite musicians, you know, probably of all time, really. I don't listen to him so much nowadays, but he's been a big influence on me, not just as a pianist, but as a musician. And obviously he does these solo concerts where he plays from zero, you know, and he has done for some time. But also in his trio, I know the Out-of-Towners, they just sat down and played, you know, and that just happens intuitively. They don't plan it. I think if you plan it, it's like, I love the Wayne Shorter quartet, and their last album is called Without a Net, which I think is a great title, because they are playing without a net, you know. And they often walk on stage and they're about to play some music, but Shorter just turns to the band and he just goes, 0. Just play together.
They just play.
They just improvise together. And it's lovely that he can trust those men, that they'll actually do that.
And of course, when you're playing this, you don't have anyone with you.
No.
You haven't got a Gary Peacock or a Jack
No,
DeJohnette
I haven't.
kind of bounce off. So you're, as you say, you are your own listener, aren't you?
Not nervous, but always apprehensive to get going in a solo concert when I'm backstage waiting, because I'm not playing with a bass player or a guitarist or whatever, and have that reliance on them to take the heat off for a moment. There's nowhere to hide. Yeah. And there's a physicality as well, very tiring to play for 40 minutes without having a break. Yeah. And also psychologically as well, is it any good? Am I repeating myself? Are the audience bored? Is all these things, you know.
Do you have a horrible person in your head that says this is a load of rubbish? Do you ever hear that?
Yeah, I think you do. And there's certain moments of it, I won't say when, where you think, I wish I had gone another way.
Yes, how do I get out of this?
Yeah, that's a really great thing, actually. Sometimes it's how do you get out of it?
Yeah.
But the thing was as well, actually, towards the end of it, it could have gone on, but I realised that it was time for, I could hear that there was time for breaks and wine and biscuits.
Yes.
And I realised it could have gone a bit more, maybe even to an hour, possibly, could have happened. But I realised that,
they haven't
time
got
constraints.
the concentration that you've got, actually.
Possibly
have
not,
they?
no.
I don't think so.
I don't probably think
I
they
don't
have.
think so. I think
I mean, I suppose if you ask me who's my ideal listener, you'd say somebody like me.
yeah.
But that maybe sounds a bit egotistical. But somebody who's open to listening to it.
Yes.
I think when I started playing this, I almost felt like I was in a meditative state.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the right word, but a trance. I mean, I remember very, very vividly playing the concert, and I have to have a watch because of loose concepts of time.
Yes.
Otherwise, I wouldn't know where I was at
Yeah.
all because of this meditative state. And I remember playing, and I played for quite some time, and I looked at the watch, and it said 20 minutes. And I do remember thinking, well, I thought it was much longer than that.
Yeah.
And then, so I played, and then I looked again, and it was nearly 40 minutes, and that felt like a few minutes.
That's the
yeah,
two
it's
times
interesting,
of 20
isn't it?
minutes, isn't it?
It could well have been my concentration to look at that point.
Yeah.
But I do remember the last 20 minutes felt like 2 minutes or 3 minutes compared to the first bit. So maybe the latter half is more successful. I mean, it's for the listener.
I wonder whether we should listen to the next one now, which is called Belongs to You.
Again, it's all about the sonorities of the room now. I'm playing some really kind of rich harmony. And I thought this would be a stocking filler to the end. Really, the album is about the first track for me as a musician, really.
That was Belongs to You, played in a solo concert by Paul Wilkinson in October this year. And we're talking about Paul's improvisation, which is quite a specialised skill that he's honed over the decades, really. So, Paul, I wonder whether there's anybody that you would say was a key player in extended improvisation.
The American pianist Keith Jarrett is one of those great improvisers. He started doing these kind of solo concerts and has done them throughout his life, you know. I mean, I definitely have a different sound than he has, but I do love his solo concerts very much. So yes, he's definitely one of the biggest influences, and there's not many more people around who dare to try this, really.
Yeah.
But in the jazz world, I admire the aesthetic of Wayne Shorter very much, as we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
The fact that however old he is now, he must be in his 80s. Is this feeling of the unknown, you know? And there's a lovely phrase when you know, he says, "What do you give to a present? What do you give as a present to life when life has it all?" And he says it's the effort of being original. And I really love that. I really love that phrase, and I love some of the things he says about his band. How he says it's like going to a parade, and there's lots of people in the audience, and you're stood at the back with your little boy, and he can't see, but you can see. But once you put him on your shoulders, he can see further than you. And he likens that to his musicians in his group. He says that now a lot of them can see this music much further than he can, and he's trained them in it. And I just love his aesthetic of the way that he talks about his philosophy about music, and the fact now that it's about without a net, you know, this freedom in music. And I love that, really. I really do love that.
And I wonder, when you're playing, do you have a sense of the meaning or an emotional content, and does it develop as well?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. There is times in the concert, it sounds cheesy to say, I suppose, but where there's a shiver down the backbone because I've discovered a new sound, something new I've not played before, and that does make me feel connected to it emotionally. You know, yes, I am thinking it's very much from the heart, you know. Music's a result of a process that's nothing to do with music. It's about being human, and you come, you know, it comes to you through other things, whether it be writing, philosophy, poetry. You know, they spark off the inspiration sometimes for this kind of thing. So music doesn't come from music. There's a lovely story of my old piano professor, Bill Kinghorn, who had a student years ago who his whole life was music, and Bill was trying to get him to go to the art gallery and read some poetry, but he wasn't interested in any of that. He was only interested in the music. And Bill said to him that there is more important things in the world than music. And he said, no, there isn't. So Bill said to him, imagine if I tied a plastic bag round your head and pulled some string really tight and you couldn't breathe. Would you still be thinking about Duke Ellington and Vaughan Williams? And he said, no, I'd be thinking about getting out of this bag. And so Bill said, well, so there's more important things than music. But, you know, music doesn't come from music. It's your own experiences in life and things that can be expressed through your fingers, if you like, and through your emotions, you know.
And you know, it's a big word, isn't it? Channeling. Do you think you sometimes channel something that comes almost from like a universal source?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds a little flowery, doesn't it? But yes, I do believe that. I don't know where the music fully comes from when it starts to come out, if you know what I mean. So I do think there is some channeling. There's that phrase that a lot of musicians use, you know, who's in charge, you know, the performer or the improviser or the performer and the composer, or is there something else? I don't know the answer. I just be relaxed when I play, and hopefully it always seems to come out, thankfully.
That sounds like quite a good point at which to wind up our conversation on that interesting note. If people want a copy, where can they get this Improvisations album?
You can. It's a download album only, and if you go to my website, which is paulwilkinson.co.uk, you will find a link there to download the album. Hosted by a company called Bandcamp, and they're really passionate about giving money back to the musicians. It supports the musician and it helps them to make more music in the future. So you can download it from there. But also if you use YouTube, go onto the YouTube website, and if you type "Hold Out Your Hand" solo piano, you can actually watch the concert as well. And then there is a link there to download the album as well.
Yeah, great. Well, Paul, thank you very much indeed for that very interesting conversation about your improvisations, and also thank you for playing them so that we've got the recordings. I'm sure people have really appreciated hearing them today.
Well, thanks very much. It's great to be with you as ever, Stephanie. I'm sure I'll see you again soon.
I'm sure you will. Well, that's all from us then. Me, Stephanie Blythe, and Paul Wilkinson. Bye.
Bye.